Well, the fall is a great time of year for comfort food classics, and today we are doing the classic of all classics of French comfort foods. We are doing Beef Bourguignon. Hey guys, thanks for joining us. If this is your first time tuning in, let us know you're out there by giving us a big thumbs up below and then hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss a video. Now, let's start cooking. We are making Beef Bourguignon, or in French, Boeuf Bourguignon. But the main ingredients for this dish are, of course, the beef, and we'll talk about that in a second, but also Burgundy wine. And it's basically a beef stew, but it's braised in wine rather than just in some other liquid. And in this case, Burgundy wine, and this is a wine from the Burgundy region. And when you talk about wine from the Burgundy region, you're generally talking about a Pinot Noir, a wine made from the red Pinot Noir grape. So that's what we're using. You don't have to use an expensive Pinot Noir for this because we're going to be braising meat in it. And when you have this as a meal, it's great to pair it with a nice Pinot Noir. But something medium priced for the braising is fantastic. Now to the meat. There's lots of different choices of meat that you can use for this. Lots of people use chuck, they use flank, they use shank. You can use all different kinds of meat, but because this is a long, slow process, you want a cut of meat that is it's very meaty, but it's also gelatinous, and it also has a lot of moisture in it as it cooks. So I have chosen to use beef cheeks. And beef cheeks, I've chosen them for a few different reasons. One is the beautiful red color of this meat. The flavor is just fantastic. It's very tender as it cooks and breaks down. It's got lots of marbling throughout the meat, which helps it to break down and moisturize over the cooking time. And so that's going to be the meat that we use for this. And let's just look at the rest of our ingredients, and we'll talk a little bit about the process. So basically, it's like making any other stew, but what we're going to do is we're going to start, all beef bourguignon classically starts with lardons or some kind of cured pork. And so that's what we have here. We have some bacon lardons, and these are not smoked, they're cured. So that's going to be the first thing we do is we will render the fat from those. Then we'll remove those, and we'll use that fat to cook some of our vegetables in. So we render that fat, and now one of the things that I like to do before everything else is actually partially cook our garnish. And the garnish in this case, or part of the garnish, is going to be button mushrooms and some pearl onions. And I'll tell you a little bit later how we'll do those. The first thing we're going to do though is we're going to soak these pearl onions. A little trick for pearl onions, if you use fresh ones, is to just pour some recently boiled water over them. And what that does is it causes them to soften up. What we're going to do is we're going to pour this boiling water over them, and then we're going to put them in an ice bath to stop the cooking. All right, I think our water is ready. So we'll pour that water over them while we are preparing everything else. So I'll just put these in a pot, and we'll pour this water over them, and we'll let them soak 3 or 4 minutes in that water. And then once they finish soaking, we're going to put them in a cold water bath to stop the cooking, and we'll be able to easily remove the sleeves from those. And then our next part of our dish is going to be our mirepoix. And we're going to make a mirepoix, and a mirepoix is just a collection of vegetables that you chop up similar sizes that are going to be used to flavor your braise. And in this case, it's going to be onions and celery and garlic. So we'll use those for our mirepoix. And then we will, now I know that you see these carrots here, but these are some extra special organic carrots that we'll use as part of our garniture as well. These will get added to our stew toward the end of cooking for about the last 30 minutes of cooking. So then we've got our Bouquet Garni, and we've got a Bouquet Garni, and we're going to make it today using a couple of sprigs of rosemary, a couple of sprigs of thyme, some parsley, and a bay leaf. And we're just going to tie all of that up in this leek leaf, and I've got some kitchen string here. We'll tie all that up, and we'll use that as we braise our meat. And now one of the other things that we have to do is we have to brown our meat. So once we cut this beef up, we're going to dredge it with a little bit of flour, or actually we're going to sprinkle it with a little bit of flour when we put it in to sear it. So we want to sear this meat and get it nice and brown before we cook it all the way. And we'll talk about that some more later. And then we are going to deglaze our pan using a little bit of cognac, and I've only got about 60 milliliters of cognac, probably a quarter cup here. And then we'll add to that our wine, which I'm going to, when you get the wine fresh out of the bottle, it needs to be reduced to intensify the flavor a little bit and to release the alcohol. So we're actually going to pour this wine in one of our pots back here, and we're going to let it cook while we're preparing everything else. So I'll go ahead and get that poured in. And then as we continue the braising process, what we'll do is we'll top the wine up with some veal stock. And you can use beef stock. Some people use chicken stock. I happen to have some homemade veal stock that I've made, and that's what we're going to use to top that up. And then, and this is a little extra special touch, we're using a veal demi-glace that I've also made. And it's not imperative that you use the veal demi-glace. It's just a rare, very nice professional touch, and you can find demi-glace at specialty stores. So those are our ingredients. Let's get started. So our pearl onions, we have covered them with a bit of boiling water. They've been sitting for about 5 minutes. Now we're going to just put them in an ice water bath, and this will stop the cooking. And it's not like they're really cooking, but it'll stop them getting cooked. And this will also help to loosen up the skins so that we'll easily be able to remove those skins. So we'll just set those aside. And now the next thing we'll do is we're going to get our lardons started. So I'm just going to put them in my cocotte here in the back. And we're going to let them cook slowly so that they can render their fat. And now while those are starting to render, we'll start working on the rest of our ingredients. Our lardons are slowly rendering their fat, so we're just going to let those go on this burner back here. And I'm also going to go ahead and put my wine. I've got my entire bottle of wine in this pan, and I'm just going to put them over a relatively high fire. I want to go ahead and bring that up to a boil, and then we're going to bring it down to a simmer, an aggressive simmer, because we would like for that wine to reduce by maybe even, a half, a quarter or a half, something like that. So in the meantime, while that's happening, let's prepare the meat. And again, like I said, this is beef cheek meat, and it's we're gonna do fairly large chunks of this, because as it cooks, it will shrink. So, we're not looking for little dices. We're looking for, fairly hefty chunks of this. And all of this wonderful marbling in this beef are going to provide some fantastic flavor as it breaks down. All right, so we'll finish getting this done, and then we'll move on to our vegetables. Okay, the meat is cut up, and so now what we're going to do is we're just going to season it fairly liberally. I'm just using my right hand to season and my left hand to turn. All right, and we'll do some black pepper as well. So we just want to get the meat liberally seasoned, and now we are continuing to render our lardons in the pan back here. And while we do that, let's prepare our mushrooms. And just to show you what I'm doing with these mushrooms, it's very simple. I'm just brushing them off. By the way, we're using cultivated mushrooms. Anytime you use cultivated mushrooms, there's really no need to wash those mushrooms. You just need to brush them. And so we're just brushing these off. And if you've got some that have stems that are a little bit dry, you can just trim those stems from there. But we're just going to cut these mushrooms in quarters. And so that's what we'll be doing with our mushrooms. Okay, lardons have rendered and they are ready to be taken out, and we're just going to take these out and set them aside because they will now they'll get added in actually toward the end of the cooking process. So that's perfect. And now our mushrooms are prepared and ready. We're going to leave that oil in there, the fat from the lardons, and I'm just going to add a little bit of butter. I'm probably adding a tablespoon of butter. And once this butter foams, we're going to add our mushrooms. And while we are waiting for that to happen, I'll show you how we do the onions. Our butter has now foamed, and once the butter starts foaming, that's when we want to put our mushrooms in. So we'll go ahead and put those in. And again, we are just doing kind of a pre-cook because these mushrooms will get added at the end of cooking as well. We just want to get them seasoned, and we want to get their water released. So what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of salt, because basically what we're doing is sweating them. So we'll add a little bit of salt to those, which will help them release their moisture. And now our wine has been sitting on the back burner, been reducing. It is ready to go. It's reduced by probably close to a half, something like that. And so now back to our pearl onions. Since they've been sitting in this water, basically all you have to do is just peel off the skin, and they just peel off very, very easily. So we'll finish that with our onions. And once our mushrooms finish, we will put our onions in and saute those. Okay, our mushrooms are now ready. They're very flavorful. They've been just kind of seared, sauteed. And lardons and butter, I don't know what could be better than that. All right, so now our pan is going fairly dry, so I'm just going to add just a little bit of oil, because again, we don't want to fry these onions, we just want to gently saute them. So, and we'll add a little bit more butter to those. So butter's foaming, let's add our onions. And while our onions do their thing, I'll just show you how we do the Bouquet Garni. So Bouquet Garni is basically just a flavoring herb package. You could use cheesecloth if you had it, but I like using a leek leaf when I've got leeks around. So you just put a string right down the center of that leek, and then just put your herbs inside, just like that. Bay leaf, and we're just going to roll everything up in the leaf. And now we'll take our string and just run it down the side of the leek here and around, and Same thing, and then we just tie it off. And that is our bouquet garni. And the great reason to do this is so that you don't have these herbs just floating around loose in your mixture, so you have to pick them out later on. So I'm just gonna move our onions around a little bit, and we just really want to get a nice, maybe just a little bit of color on our onions. You see what we got going there? We're just kind of partially cooking them. But again, our onions and our mushrooms and the carrots that we have are going to be added in at the very last moment of cooking our mixture. So the next thing we're going to do is prepare our mirepoix, and that's just going to be our onions and our carrots. So just to do those, just to demonstrate a little bit, for your carrots, you can just come down the center of your carrot like that. And we're not looking for big uniformity here. We just want to be fairly similar in size. So we're just going to do some dice, something like that. And that's the size that we want our carrots to be. So that's it for our carrot size. And as soon as the onions finish, we'll be able to put our carrots and our cooking onions into our pan a lot. So for our onion, just cut it in half. And just always using your hand as a bridge or over the onion to make sure you're not cutting yourself. We will just, I'll just use this. And you can use your paring knife to peel your onion a little bit. And for these onions now, we're looking for a similar dice like we have on our carrots. And so to do that, I'm just going to come down, make some vertical cuts in our onion, and then we'll make a lateral cut. And now, just like that. All right, so we'll finish getting our onions and our carrots diced, and we'll be ready to move on. And finally, our garlic. And for the garlic, we're just going to, I like to just smash it like that. And we are not going to be mincing this really fine. We're just going to be chopping it. So what I like to do with the garlic is to leave it whole, and then I'm going to cut it in half lengthwise. And we're going to treat it just like we do our onion. And that is, we'll just come down, make some vertical cuts there, just like that. And notice I'm actually trying not to cut through the roots of the garlic. And we'll just make some straight cuts. And we're just dicing this garlic. We're not mincing it finely. So in the garlic, I'm putting in a separate little jar because it's going to be cooked after we sweat the onions and the carrots. Then we'll add the garlic to the mix. Garlic tends to cook faster, so it doesn't need to go in at the same time as the onions and the carrots. And I know I'm leaving, fairly large chunks here, but this is going to be cooking over 2 hours, so it's definitely going to break down and flavor our mix. Our onions are nice and seared, and we can now take those out. All right, our onions, mushrooms, and lardons are done. Now it is time for us to brown the meat. So we're just going to place it in the pan, and we want to make sure this meat is well browned on all sides. So we don't want to crowd the pan. And if we need to do it in 2 batches, we'll certainly do that. Even though we do have our large cocotte here. Yeah, I think we'll do it in batches. So for our first batch, we'll go ahead and now just sprinkle that with a little flour. Because this flour, which by the way, we are using gluten-free flour, in case you want this to remain gluten-free. You can use gluten-free flour and it works just as well. But the flour is going to be used as a binder as well and help to thicken our sauce. So we're just going to get this meat browned on all sides, and then we'll move on to our mirepoix. So just a quick word about browning the meat. You want to make sure that you actually get this meat nice and brown. Look at that. You see the color on that? That's what you want when you're browning the meat. You don't want, this piece is not ready yet. I just put this in, it's not ready yet. So there's the difference between a piece that's ready, it's got some caramelization on the outside of it. That is your flavor. So that's what we're going for with this browning process. So don't rush this process. Be sure and let it brown the way it needs to. Okay, our beef is nicely browned. And again, you're not cooking this meat, you're just browning the outside so that you are just building up some incredible flavor and color. So I've browned this meat, and now we're just going to set it aside until we're ready to go back in, which won't be too long from now. And now at this point, if you have any additional oil in your pan, any extra oil, you can drain it. So I'm just going to drain that little bit of oil. And this is an important step because now we are basically starting the process of making the sauce. And not sure if you can see that, but you see all those bits that are stuck to the bottom. That's what's going to make an incredible sauce. But to do that, we're first going to add some butter. And I'm probably putting 2 tablespoons of butter in. And we are going to add our onions and carrots. And we're just going to cook those until they're soft. We're going to sweat them until they're soft and translucent. And then we're going to add our garlic. We don't want to burn the garlic, so we're going to take a few minutes before we add our garlic. But these guys are just going to sweat in that butter. And as always, when we sweat something, we put a little bit of salt in there. That helps them release their moisture, but it also starts the seasoning process. So those will sweat, and we'll just stir them around until they're nice and soft and translucent. Then we'll add our garlic, and then we'll deglaze our pan. Our onions are soft and translucent, and now let's throw in our garlic. And when I say soft and translucent, I'm referring to the onions, not the carrots. The carrots are not going to get soft and translucent. So we've got our garlic in. We'll stir this around and let that garlic cook for a couple of minutes. And then we'll deglaze our pan. If you only knew what this smelled like right now, you would just be going crazy. But this might be my favorite moment in doing any kind of a braising process, and that is the point at which we deglaze the pan, because we really are starting to make this, it's the beginnings of just a wonderful sauce. So we're going to toss in some Cognac. And wow, look at that. Can you see what's going on there? That is the beginning of this sauce. Oh, very nice. All right, and now look at, I'm easily loosening up all the bits on the bottom. So we just let that Cognac do its work for about a minute. We want to just cook the alcohol off that Cognac, because all we want is just for the deepening of the flavor from that. But look at how it's mixing with the flour and the vegetables. Beautiful. Okay, now we're going to put our wine in, just like that. And now we're going to crank our heat up Make sure it's on high. And we can now put our beef back in. Then we're going to bring everything to a boil. And we'll be on our way to a beautiful, beautiful braise. Look how dark and rich that sauce is looking already. All right, so now we've got our beef in. I'm just going to go ahead and pour the juices in. We're going to bring this to a boil, and now we're going to cover this with our veal stock. And again, like I said, you could use beef stock, you could use chicken stock. I mean, for that matter, you could use water. But we want to use this veal stock to just cover that. And we don't need to fully submerge everything. We just want this. We're now going to bring this to a boil, and then once it comes to the boil, we'll turn it down and let it simmer 2.5 to 3 hours. Or we could put it in an oven. I'm going to do this in the oven today, and so I've got my oven at about 295 Fahrenheit. It's actually at about 160, I think, centigrade. So what I'll do is I'll put that in the oven, and it's going to be very hot at first, and then we'll turn it down a little bit, and we'll just let it slow cook, and that's where the beauty of the flavor comes from. All right, this is what we want. Everything is coming to the boil now. We're going to add our Bouquet Garni. And now we can turn it down and let it simmer and do its thing. And now we have not added the veal glass in just yet. We'll add that at the end. Right now I've just got the veal stock and the wine in there. So we're going to cover this, and we're going to put it in the oven for a couple of hours. Hey everybody, it's Walter from Artistic Gourmet Adventures. My wife Kim and I own this unique small group tour company where we host groups of 6 to 12 guests for 1-week luxury adventures in beautiful locations throughout Europe and the United States. I have the privilege of being the adventure chef, creating and preparing daily gourmet meals for our guests. So, in this video series, from our cozy home kitchen here in the beautiful Loire Valley of France, we will demonstrate a wide variety of recipes, from culinary classics to originals, as well as covering a few professional kitchen techniques for the home chef. For more information on Artistic Gourmet Adventures, check our website, linked in the description below. All right, it's been about 2.5 hours, and we can now check our beef and see where we are. I'm checking it now because I think that we should be close enough to where we will only have about 30 to 40 minutes left. So let's check for tenderness. And let's check one of the larger pieces. Oh, nice. Okay. So now, oh yes, very nice. What I'm checking for is how tender it is. We don't want it falling apart. We don't want the meat falling apart, but we want it definitely tender to the touch. So, and that's very nice and tender. All right, so we are at the point where we can add our carrots now. And what we'll do is we'll put the carrots in and let them cook for probably 15 minutes. In the mix here, and then we'll put our other garnish in and let that cook inside as well, and for another 15 minutes or so. So we'll put this back in the oven, and we'll be ready to finish it up. Okay, we've had this in the oven now for about 15 minutes. Let's check and see. Okay, carrots are actually still a little bit firm, but that's fine. They'll just continue to cook. And what we'll do now is empty the rest of our garnish that we pre-cooked in. We've got our pearl onions, we've got our mushrooms, and our lardons. And oh my, look at that. We'll just let everybody get together and get happy and enjoy each other's company. And we'll put this back in the oven for another 15 minutes or so. We are one step closer to paradise. Let's just check it out. Oh my goodness. Wow. Look at that. Look at the sauce. Look at the color of that sauce. Wow. Okay, so now this is the next to the last step. What we want to do, matter of fact, let's just give it a little bit of a taste real fast. Oh wow, nice consistency of the sauce. Oh, wow, it's absolutely delicious. All right, what we'll do now is we're going to take the contents out of the bowl. We will actually toss the Bouquet Garni away. We don't need that anymore. It's done its job. And what we'll do is we'll take all of the solids and put them in I've warmed up another pot back here in the back. So we're just going to take out the contents, because the next step that we're going to do is actually thicken up and concentrate the sauce. Although from the looks of it, it doesn't need a whole lot of thickening up or concentrating. The taste is fantastic and it looks really good as well. So let me get these contents out and then we'll finish with the sauce. Okay, we've got our sauce on this burner and I've got the heat turned up quite high, and this is our consistency right here. So we want to thicken this sauce up just a little bit. It doesn't need a lot. It doesn't need to be, you know, as thick as a gravy or something. So I'm going to whisk in a little bit of my Veal Demi-glace. And again, if you don't have Veal Demi-glace, you can always make a slurry. And a slurry is something that is used a lot in Asian cooking to thicken sauces. And it's really literally, you can get a tablespoon of cornstarch and a teaspoon of water and of cold water, and just stir those two together, and then stir that into your sauce or whisk it in, and it will immediately begin to thicken it up. And the main reason that you would use Veal glass is that of course it has wonderful color, but it also really has a deepening quality in terms of the flavor. So now let's taste our sauce. Wow, it's really excellent. I'm just going to put a little bit more of our glass in here, and we don't want to go too far with the sauce because as it cools, it will thicken up. So I can tell you that's going to be as much of that we'll want to use, and we'll let that cook and thicken up for another minute or so, and we'll be ready to serve it. Our sauce is absolutely fantastic, beautiful dark brown color. And so now we're just going to transfer our meat back into the pan, and we will serve it up. It is that time. It is time to give this Beef Bourguignon a try. And we have paired this with some garlic fennel mashed potatoes. Oh my goodness, look at that. Oh, just a couple of pieces there. And let's get some of our garnish. Beautiful onions. And look at this sauce. Very nice. Okay. So we're going to finish it today with just a little bit of, these are frizzled leeks. I'm not sure if we've done a video on frizzled leeks, so you should check that out because it's a perfect pairing when you've got potatoes and all of these other flavors going on. They give you a little bit of a crunch. And so this is our Beef Bourguignon with a beautiful sauce, with a beautiful Pinot Noir sauce. And now we are pairing this with a wine also from Burgundy, which is a Pinot Noir, and some beautiful French baguette. Well, it is that time to give this a try. So I'm just gonna go in and I'm just gonna go straight for the beef. Oh man, wow. A little bit of that mash. Beautiful deep flavor. Oh man. And the sauce is it's just absolutely to die for. And just everything a slow cooked stew should taste like. And let's try one of these carrots. Fantastic carrots. Straight from the organic garden. Perfectly paired with a Pinot Noir from Burgundy. If you've never tried a Beef Bourguignon, this is the time to do it. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, give us a thumbs up below and hit that subscribe button, it's free. And ring the bell if you want to be notified as soon as we release a new video. Also, let us know in the comments if you have any special recipe requests. We really appreciate you tuning in. See you next time.